Hello, and welcome to Inflection Point Conversations. I'm Michelle Obeda, an art director and 3D artist. In this podcast series, I'll be interviewing experts in the fields of art, architecture, and visualization. Together, we'll take a deep dive into the disruptive topics that have reached an inflection point in our industry. If you're enjoying this podcast, please take a moment to like, rate, and subscribe. You can also comment and give feedback. I'd love to reach more people and grow this amazing community. Today, I'm talking with Camille Lymer. Camille is a freelance CG supervisor. He works across different fields such as commercials, automotive, exhibitions, and ArcViz. COVID-19 laid out the groundwork for enabling remote work, and Camille made the most of it by embracing a fully digital nomad life since then. Being open to the changes that a nomad lifestyle requires has also made him one of the most ardent advocates for an optimistic and hopeful vision of AI in the CG industry. Welcome, Camille.
Hello, thanks for having me, Michelle.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the podcast. I'm really excited to talk to you and ask you a bunch of stuff. First of all, the question is where are you at the moment?
I am in Miami, Florida at the moment. It seems to be a much better place to spend the winter in Europe, which is kind of summer here at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm glad we can see that out of your window. I was hoping you'd show me some kind of sunshine, maybe some palm trees.
Yeah, there is definitely plenty of that here, yes.
Nice. Um, well, let's start at the beginning. I'd love to ask you what got you interested in CGI in the first place. How did you get into it?
I was quite a big of a, I was a big gamer when I was a teenager. I belong to this generation where video game became from just existed to become super awesome. And so I really wanted to work in video games. So that was the beginning of me saying, how do you do video game? What is 3D in general? And so I asked my parents, and I told my parents that's what I want to do, but they obviously had no idea what the industry was, right? We're talking 20 years ago. And so my dad went to the close the shop and he asked the guy and he said, do you have any software that can do video game? I know nothing about it. The guy in the shop obviously knew nothing about it neither, but it just quickly took something out of the shop, and that was my first 3D software. And when I opened, it was a blank page, and that was actually real-time engine to create video game. And so I created my own video game all in code, starting from scratch, knowing nothing,
Oh, cool.
um, literally modeling like a space station made of cube that you translate, but everything based on code. So when I discovered later on 3ds Max, and I was like, oh, all the time I wasted on
How
modeling
old were
3D
you when
assets.
you did that?
I must have been 17, I think.
Mm.
Yeah, I was around 17.
That's cool. So did you
Uh,
teach yourself how to code, or did you just learn like some basic coding?
Yeah, I learned some basic. I wouldn't say teaching because I made all the beginner's mistake you can do when you code. But yeah, that's how I started, and I spent all the night building this small video game. That was really exciting. And then after that, I went to a 3D school. I went to an art school, learning 3D. And we had to do internships, right, in between the year. And I was lucky enough to do two internships in the same year. So my first one was actually in video game for a company based in Paris. And then after that, I've done a second one that was in architecture in the ArcViz practice. And I actually realized that I enjoyed much more working in the ArcViz side of it than the video
Mm.
game. So then I branched into ArcViz.
What did you prefer about the ArcViz?
The job was much more of a generalist kind of job when you're really involved from the very early production of the image up to the very end. While the video game is a much more bigger machine, where
Mm.
if you don't enter that with a very high seniority level, then the tasks are very repetitive. So all I've done for a month was creating LOD of animals, and that's all I've done. Retopologize 5 different versions for a month. That was it. Right?
Hmm. I definitely had a couple of months doing that when I worked in video games too.
Yeah.
Um, So do you prefer the more generalist aspect to CGI? Do you like to do a little bit of everything?
Yeah, I think having like understanding the big picture is interesting to me. I really respect the guy that have found their way. Like I'm an animator. All I really like to do is animate. I don't really care about the rendering or the rigging before and after. I respect that, but I find myself um, losing attention and being bored quite quickly. And so
Hmm.
getting the big picture is much more interesting and stimulating to me.
Yeah. Do you think that certain people are geared towards certain kinds of roles like that? Like some people are much better focusing on one specific task. I feel like I'm a bit more like you, where I like to do a little bit of all the things.
Yeah, I think everyone is different. I've definitely seen some artists that are a bit more, the typical um, lonely artist in his basement working on his painting for 3 months, making it like amazing. Yeah, there are artists like that. Um, I really respect that. But maybe I don't have just the patience or the discipline to do that myself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know. I think there's definitely different kinds of people. What do you like about working within a team as part of a process? Like what is it that you like about the kind of process of that?
Yeah, I mean I think that's just much more fun to work with a team rather than to be me alone at home with my headset working on my rendering. I like that every now and then it's good. But really it's fun to just work with people. That's the best way to learn some new stuff, to be stimulating and if you find good coworkers, good people to work with, it's actually fun. That's actually meetings you're looking forward to. Your Monday 9 a.m. can be fun if you work with the right people.
Yeah. So you were working when you started working in industry, you were working in companies and I presume that they were like in studio kind of thing, right? This is before you went
Yes.
freelance?
Yes. I've been a permanent for most of my career for like, yeah, 11, 12 years. So yeah, 90% of that has been in the office on site. And it's only very recently that remote work has been allowed. But I do remember on my first company, for what they called security reason, we were absolutely not allowed to remote connect to a computer. So quite often on Sunday, I was going to the office to check just that deadline hadn't crashed. The render farm was still up and running. And I was doing that every Sunday, and it was okay. Like I lived close by, took an hour, but yeah, you literally go in, check the render farm, go out, and you were doing that every Sunday. So now you can just quickly connect to that, and that's yeah, much better.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I feel like that's changed a lot of people's life
Mhm.
in different ways, I guess. Because I guess like do you find, some of the good things are like you said, you don't have to go into the office, you can check at any time. I feel like on the flip side, you're always able to remote into your computer so you don't have such a separation when you go home.
Yeah, I mean that is true. That's also like a discipline that you have to learn. You have to actively work on this. Um, but yeah, that is true, 100%. It hasn't been easy, and I have the feeling that now it's been a couple of years and people got better at finding their own pace, finding their own moments, what works for them, balancing with the family life as well. People having kids adds another layer of complexity and reduces the time when you are able to focus 100% of your time. But people are getting better at this every day.
Yeah. And how long ago since you went freelance? And then how long ago since you decided to become a digital nomad?
Um, I've I've been freelancing for a couple of years, and it's been a year that I've been fully remote.
Yeah. So tell me about the digital nomad lifestyle. Like, where did you start? When did you just decide to do it? And like, where was the first place that you moved to?
Yeah, so my story is not really the typical, story that people like about the American self-made man. Like the guy had a vision, he worked super hard, that was his goal, he achieved his goal. That's absolutely not my story. It just kind of happened to me, and I was like, oh, this is actually quite cool. I like it, and I'm gonna try to carry on. But the beginning is a bit of a personal story. I was like having a breakup with my girlfriend, and it took like quite some months to sort out the flat. And at that time, I had a friend of mine who called me, and he was like, "I just broke up with my girlfriend." And I was like, "Me too." And I need to find a place to live for a month. I was like, "Me too." And he said, "I have a friend in Morocco. We could crash at his for like a month. Maybe let's just go to Morocco together for a month. We rent a car, we travel." And I was like, okay, deal. And that was actually the first time like I
Wow.
started working fully remotely. And so when I came back, I realized that maybe I don't need to actually even find another place to live. I can just maybe carry on and embrace that as a lifestyle. So yeah, it really just happened to me. And then once I got into it, then I started to put some effort into making it a sustainable, like a more ongoing way of living.
Yeah. So what did you need? I mean, did you need things like did you need to set up visas? Or were you always on like a traveling visa for 3 months kind of thing? Did you have to plan that before?
Well, so the first year, I stayed quite a lot in Europe. So because I'm also like French or the European, you do not have visa, and I also have the British citizenship, which also help because I'm coming and going to the UK quite a lot. But I'm mainly on the tourist visa. On some of the places, I think it's borderline with what's legally possible. But really, I'm on no one's radar. I don't make enough money or work in any, industry that is so sensitive that people are going to be on my back. So, yeah, I'm usually on the tourist visa so far.
Yeah, that's great. And what have been like in general, what's been like the most rewarding part of this experience so far?
That is a very broad question. Um,
Top five.
yeah, even harder. Uh,
I mean, the sunshine behind you seems to be one of
yeah.
the answers. You like
The
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 sunshine,
weather
right?
is a big one. Yes, the weather is great. But I think generally is I have the feeling that the lifestyle is a much more coherent way of living. So that the old boundaries where you work at the permanent all year long, and then you use your 25 day allowance to go on holiday where you don't work at all, the 100%, 0%. I've always found a bit strange.
Hmm.
And now this whole lifestyle has started to blend in a much more elegant way. So it's kind of like holiday starts at 6 p.m. now. I clock out, I
Mm.
go out, this is a new language, I'm trying some new food, and then I'm back to work. And this is a much more, like consistent pace as opposed to before with this really 100% work, 100% holiday.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So it's like you're traveling as soon as you clock off work, you're now on holiday.
Yeah, that's how it
Mm.
feels. Yeah, let's explore this new district. Let's meet those new guys speaking this new language, trying this new food, dancing this new music. This is very stimulating and fulfilling.
Yeah. What are some of the challenges that you found? Is there anything that you found quite difficult and maybe that you'd like to change or find a solution to?
There are definitely a few. I mean, you have to pay attention to the internet connection speed that you get in most of the Europe and in the US. It's perfectly fine. In Morocco, that can be a bit more tricky, especially when you work in the Medina, like the old town of the port. Those have like extremely thick buildings, like thick walls. So you would get lucky if you have 2Gs inside
Oh, wow.
there. Uh, I have had some power cuts as well in Central America. And while usually the power cuts do not last longer than 10 minutes, you never know if it's gonna come back or maybe you're on a deadline.
Hmm.
So that has happened, and you have to find like a backup plan, whether you work with your phone, streaming data, or whether you have like a co-working space that is within working distance. So yeah, like internet connection can be quite a good one. I've put quite a lot of effort into finding the right gear that is portable enough,
Hmm.
that can fit in a rucksack, but also that can provide me a certain comfort, like having a dual screen that have both resolution would be very good. I'm keeping an eye on some new devices that are coming where it's like you basically you can fold everything and you get triple screen. They are
Yeah.
still cost prohibitive at the moment, but that's
Hmm.
gonna be really, really helpful.
I was going to
And
ask you about your
yeah.
setup, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so I got like the bare minimum, so that's like foldable
Oh,
keyboards
nice.
everywhere. I got foldable screen, like I literally travel with one rucksack and I can fit everything with there, and I have two screens and I work comfortably. It's not 4K though, so when I work on 4K projects, it just basically takes longer to review because I have to zoom in full time and review everything, or rely on my coworkers to do some proper quality control review.
Hmm. And what about time zones? Have you found anything complicated with different time zones, or do you think people are more set up now, work with more remote work that
No,
they allow for
time
it?
zone is a big thing, especially as a CG supervisor. Now I'm working mainly with teams. My time is, like 50% on meetings. Um, so the time zone are very tricky because most of my clients, actually, yeah, I would say 90% of my clients are European based. So that's why last year I mainly stayed within the European time zone. And it's been recently that I've put effort into finding ways to work in different time zones. So at the moment, I'm in Miami, Florida, and I have found a way to work. I have an overlap with Europe, and I'm working on some other project in the afternoon. So I'm doing slightly different thing. I'm trying to transition from charging per day as a freelancer to charging flat fee scope, which would allow um, much more freedom. And right now I'm just talking about the East Coast time, but when you want to go to Asia, you have literally zero overtime with Europe. So unless you're
Mm-hmm.
willing to work nighttime, that's
Mm-hmm.
gonna be tough.
So that's a bit prohibitive
Yeah.
as well, right? Like in
Yeah, I
terms of
mean
where you
that's
can go.
it is, but there are ways around it. You just have to make a plan and work towards it. So for instance, at the moment, I am about to launch a small collective of artists that is going to be called Co-Collective. And this is a bunch of freelancers, basically friends of mine that I've worked with in the past. And we're teaming up together in the hope of being able to take bigger scope as a flat fee rather than a day rate. So we can do
Mm-hmm.
bigger thing and we can do it. The whole setup is full remote. Like I have some friends everywhere in Europe. So I'm working toward that. So it's not easy, but with a proper plan and a bit of luck, hopefully that will work out.
That's great. Yeah, good luck with that. I feel like
Yeah.
I've heard from a couple of people that kind of thing more recently of forming a collective so that you're not bound to a studio, but you have the power of number of people, because if a lot of people are looking for
Yes.
work, you can take big jobs and work
Yes,
amongst you.
exactly. And I have the feeling that this kind of collective is already in place. Like the only thing missing is basically a name and maybe a legal structure. But when I'm getting called for work and I'm already busy, um, I always like send message around my friend and I say, I got this
Mm,
job, I can't take it. Shall I pass your contact? Are you available? So this is already happening in the industry
I
under the hood,
see.
but we just now making it official,
Formalizing.
having yeah, exactly, one email address for everyone, one website to communicate. So that's basically literally the finishing labeling touch to an
Yeah.
existing network.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Mm.
So, would you ever consider starting your own studio at some point, or do you think this is the preferred alternative?
Um, that is a very personal answer. That would be my preferred alternative. Founding an own studio, I don't know, maybe. I'm not gonna say no.
You'd have a lot more different responsibilities that
Yes, it's a
might
different
mean you'd
job.
have to.
Yeah, it's a different job. It's a different responsibility. It's a different day. You're gonna spend your day differently. dealing much more with admin and legal and, accountant and all those very important things that needs to be done. But at the core, I want to do 3D. So I'm not discarding the idea, but I would be very happy to delegate everything
Mm.
that is non-3D related to a partner.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair. So what cities and countries have you been working from so far? Could you've named a few. Maybe give us a list.
Yes. So I have worked a bit in London. London is still pretty much the closest city I would call home at the moment. So I'm going there quite often, every 3, 4 months. I've worked quite a lot in France. I was really able to spend a lot of time with my family this year, which was great because the previous 3 year I just got COVID literally a week before Christmas. So, like
Oh,
we had a overdue amount of time with my family.
nice.
So I worked a month in Morocco. I've done most of Portugal. I started from the south in Portugal and I went up along the coast until I reached Spain in the northwest part of Spain called Galicia. And from Galicia, I traveled all along the Spanish coast until I reached France again. Spent a bit of time in Madrid, in Barcelona, San Sebastian. That was great. I've been studying Spanish, so that was also a great excuse to spend some time in France.
Yeah.
And then I went to Costa Rica in Central America. So again, my Spanish has improved. And there, while Costa Rica is a geographically small country, you like it's actually quite big. If you need to rent a car and see everything, it actually takes quite a
Mm.
lot of time because it's very hilly. So there's no like straight highway. So I think a month is a good timing to see Costa Rica. And I'm now in Florida. And on my agenda for the next year, I'm gonna have everything around the Adriatic Sea. So that will be the
Mm.
south of Italy, Montenegro, and Croatia. Um, and then I'm probably gonna come back this side of the Atlantic with some New York and other Central American parts.
Yeah. That's amazing. It's a really great plan. I think you have to go to the most holiday destinations to make at least your coworkers and clients jealous.
Yeah. I mean, I'm more like a mountain kind of person,
Mm.
actually. But yeah, there is a lot of beach and sea and everything. I mean, yeah, it's very enriching, fulfilling. Like, I was thinking if I had to visit all those countries while I was a permanent, only having 25 days a year, it would take me 6 years to do all the countries I've seen in the same way, right? Because you can rush to Italy for 2 days, but it's not the same as spending a month in Italy, having a car, doing 4 different locations, starting to build some friends, starting to have some regular, I don't know, sport activity where you're gonna meet regulars and you start
Hmm.
living. That's a very different thing. So it would already take 6 years to do all those stuff, and I'm being able to do that in just a year and do my work at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. You're going to make a lot of people in the United States laugh when you say just 25 days, because you know the basic here is 10 days.
I know,
And I
I
keep
know.
telling them
Yeah.
like, I'm so used to 25 days minimum. Um, Camille, let's talk about AI because you mentioned it in that you're an ardent supporter
Yeah.
of a positive future. So yeah, tell me your thoughts and how you've been using AI tools so far.
Yes, and I'm very excited about that. I think we are actually quite a lucky generation because the rate of changes that we're witnessing is really amazing. And I'm going to start with a little backstory. I have had few things in my life where you discover something and you're so hooked into it
Hmm.
that you cannot stop doing anything else. You can't even like go to bed and sleep. The first time I discovered Google Earth, I literally spent 2 days just dropping the pin
Flying.
randomly everywhere on the planet. That was, amazing. Google Earth or Wikipedia are great. And to an extent, I had the same thing with Chat GPT and Mid Journey. Like I was really amazed that it really grasps your whole attention 100% and you just want to play more. So I feel we are very lucky to be part of this generation, to have constantly new tools, new things coming. It's not even the fact that they are tools, it's just that it's cool. It's just that it's fun. It's fun to play with, right? So at the moment, in production, I would say 80% is still very much focused on pre-production. So that would be things to help pitching is quite a good idea. When you pitch for a project, you quickly need to put a deck together that gives a vision, but image don't have to be super polished or anything,
Yeah, and these are for films or for different things?
It can be for different things. You can be pitching for like interactive experience, museum, exhibition, digital twin. So really for everything that can be quite helpful. In movies, yeah, for storyboarding, we're starting to use that as a storyboard. It's usually very hard to find the exact picture that you're looking for and that you need to hire a storyboard artist. But now we can quickly fill the blank. I'm not saying it's going to replace the value of a storyboard artist, but it can sometimes save you a day when you're very close to the deadline and you just want to do one small changes. Then yeah, go on Midjourney, fit it there, bam, ship it. That's pretty much done. The rest of the tool we've been using are much more technical tools. So AI, gigapixel upscaling tool, I've used that quite a lot. I've worked on some projects where you have insane resolution. I'm talking like 24, 30K resolution. So just rendering at half resolution will save you 75% of your render time, or can also save you 75% of your render farm, which means electricity, licenses, and CPU. And you just upscale that. That works amazing. That even looks better than if you rendered at full res, to be honest. It actually sharpens things a little bit more. So yeah, that's what we've been using for. I've been using for in the past consistently. I will definitely be looking at some more exciting things. Motion capture, I think, is a big one. They have been some tools that are there. To be honest, having tried those, the amount of cleanup that you have to do after you record a take, you might as well get an animator from scratch who's going to keyframe the whole thing and it's going to look better. But, give it 10, 12 months and then we'll be able to do motion capture. That would be a big one because ArcViz has been struggling to get animation that are character driven in the narrative. And creative has been extremely talented at finding works around, right? It can be voiceover, graphics. It's very good what they've been doing, but that's going to give them like a new playground, right? They're going to be able to go a step further. So that will be a good one.
What is the AI tools that you used for motion capture? Is it something that that makes it more automatic?
Well, there's now like quite a few. You have like move.ai, for instance. Or I used a different one. Do you remember? It was quite an old day, but I used to use the Kinect version. So that was, like some guy who hacked the Xbox camera. And when you were like putting 2 or 3 Xbox camera, then he was able to recreate the depth. That was not AI, right? That was a long time ago, but that was the beginning of let's find cheaper way to do motion capture. But that was the results were not amazing. It was roughly okay for background assets, but not much more than that. So yeah, there are a few. I don't think one has really gone through the roof and is going to be the winner, but people are working on it every day.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a very interesting way of bringing ArcViz to cinematic narrative, right? That there's that big gap.
Yeah. And so yeah, more playground, more tools for the creative, and the actual like expensive motion capture studio will it's not that their job are going to be stolen by this AI, because first of all, most of the ArcViz studio were not client in the first place to those guys, right? So they're not stealing any client. And those guys will just go a step further. They're going to have even more accurate motion capture. They're going to start to capture, I don't know, each part of a tour or anything. They're really going to go deep into details. I can think of another one that I'm really looking forward to, especially for animation, like pure full 3D animation. And when you work
Hmm.
in TV show, um, having the ability to translate, you dub and lip sync the renders
Hmm.
to all the possible languages in the
Oh,
world would make the
I think I
broadcast
saw
easier.
like a
Yeah.
preview of that before. Has that been made yet? Or is that still something in the working?
I've seen some version in the working. There may be some version you can pay. I wouldn't sure on that. But it should be democratized. Maybe your podcast will do that. Maybe live, your podcast in a 5 months will be live translated to Chinese and broadcasted to Chinese on TikTok. I don't know.
So you're saying I don't have to learn Spanish on Duolingo anymore because I've been doing that every day.
I would recommend that because when you're in a pub, you're not going to be able to rely on your AI.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, but
Mm.
that's very interesting. It definitely would put any kind of production that you have like it would make it available to so
Yeah,
many more people without the language barrier. It's a very good point.
yeah. And generally, like it's going extremely fast. So by the time you contacted me to like plan this interview, and the time we're having this interview, no later than yesterday, OpenAI released their model called Sora to
Mm,
like AI for videos, right? So, even within a very short time span, a lot of things are happening.
yeah.
And also, I think there's still something that could be automated in 3D. I'm always disappointed to see that we are in 2024 and we still have to unwrap objects manually. Like that, this should be over now. Like
I
crack the
haven't
case.
unwrapped
Yeah.
anything in ages. I
Yeah.
feel like that's already been, I mean, with Unreal Engine, do you mean? Because Unreal Engine is they stopped you having I feel like I haven't unwrapped anything for a long time. That used to be the bane of my life too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I have to unwrapped quite a few assets actually. Yeah, yeah.
Uh
It's still a thing. It definitely got better, but we should have a magic button by now. Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
So you're always very interested, are you, in making processes more efficient? Why is that?
Um, uh, I think there is a beauty in setting up a system that works and is efficient, and I see that as the main drive for me to be a CG supervisor. If I set up a system in place, a team in place, which have the right tool, the right guy at the right place, the right system in place, and all you have to do is simply push a small request like, can I have this asset? And magically, after 2 days, you get a perfect asset matching the brief, matching the spec. I think there is some kind of magic into this flawless process. This is what I've been driving me as a CGS provider.
Yeah, that's great. And that's always really necessary. I feel like, especially in larger studios, you really need someone to sit to see the bigger picture from far away, don't you?
Yes, yes, you have to do that, and you also have to realize that this is a job that is, impossible to nail 100%. There will always be an element of chaos that will be brought by either embracing new tools, trying new deliverable, or clients just even.
Yeah. Where would you like to see the future of remote work? What do you think? What would you like to see in the near future? Like the ability to remote work or other people remote working, maybe?
Um, First of all, I don't even know if remote work has a future. It can go both way. I've seen a lot of companies calling the people back to the office at the moment. This is more like
Hmm.
the slope we are at. And so I don't know. I think there's not going to be one response for like all the companies. Um, I would make a difference between the companies that have existed before COVID and that have like a culture of being in the office and also have investment. They have like building a tenancy agreement. They have like bought a lot of screens and everything that now they need to
Hmm.
do something about it. But they have been also the companies that were set up just before COVID. Those guys had no choice but to go full remote. So those guys will not have the, you know, the reflex of like, that was the words before, because this word before never existed for them.
Mm.
So I don't know which way it's
So there's
gonna
no back
go.
in the office. There's
For
not
them,
back
they
in the
will
office.
never
There's
be
just,
back in the office. Yeah.
yeah,
I work with a company, for instance, so they were started 3 months before COVID. COVID hit, they were like, oh, that was good because we're just about to sign the rent agreement for an office in Shoreditch. And like, luckily we didn't sign it because we would have been fucked, huh? And so because they were full remote, because they had no choice, then they started to reach out to guys that were not in England. They started to work with a guy in Sweden and a guy in Poland, and the cooperation went great. And so they hired those guys now as long term. They just opened a branch, so they are able to get those guys on the payroll. So for them, go like there's no way you can bring those people back in the office, because they will, like, that would be changing countries. You have to like
yeah.
basically let go half of your staff and rehire. So just for that, those companies will have a different path. Um, but
So do you think that
ultimately,
there's going to be some companies that are fully remote and there's going to be some companies that are bringing everyone back in the office, and maybe there's sort of two types of cultures?
I don't know. At the moment, a lot of people seems to be thinking that the hybrid way kind of is the sweet spot for that.
Hmm.
Honestly, I wouldn't know. I think it's a bit too early, and we're lacking data. Really, we need more data to say what works. Like, for instance, is there a productivity drop in the work that the company outputs when everyone is full remote? That in itself, I actually don't know. I've seen a lot of studies, but depending on who writes it, you get different conclusion. So we need
Mm.
more data. And even let's say that, let's acknowledge for the sake of it that there is a productivity drop. Then what are the causes of those? Is that because the employees are just taking advantage of you? Is that because the manager also didn't know how to adapt and didn't know how to brief? So, how do it's very hard to say. Maybe it's not that the model doesn't work. Maybe it's just that the company needs to adapt to this new model.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I think that the responsibility of the manager really to manage their team in the way their team wants to be managed. You have to be at the service of your employee. So one lead for that would be to transition much more towards a deliverable brief rather than a per hour brief. So
Hmm.
like you already do with subcontractors, right? You pay your flat fee with subcontractors, you give them a deadline, and you agree on review points. You can do the same with your employee. I need this shot rendered on the farm by 6 p.m. and we're gonna see each other twice, whether you work at day or at night. As long as I have my shot in the quality control, I'm fine, right? So that
Hmm.
that could be one way. But really, that's on the manager's shoulder to be creative and to come with new ways for managing the workloads and the way their staff wants to be working.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'd be really interested to see the creative ways that people start bringing that together. And I guess it's going to be a supply and demand thing, right? If there's more demand for it, people are going to start trying to do that more. Because
Yes,
you're starting to prove that it's possible. You and other people who are like, working like you remotely are proving that these things
yes,
are
I have
possible, right?
seen that possible. And 5 years ago, if you had a job interview and you asked during your job interview to be full remote, like, you would never get the job, right? Now, even though it doesn't mean you're gonna get a full remote, it has become acceptable to ask for it, and there will be some step towards it. So that's already
Mm.
quite an improvement that has happened there.
Yeah. One last question before we wrap up. Do you have any advice for someone who feels like they're stuck in an office job and wants to go and work remote? What advice would you give
Yeah,
someone?
I mean, well, first,
By
work should be fun, right? So if you're bored at the office, then probably it's time for you to change job, because that means you're not stimulated or you're not working on the right project with the right coworkers. So that would be my first obvious answer. Um, And then I would say there is slightly two different advice, whether because there is a freelancing part and there is a remote part, right? And that's slightly two different things. You can be a freelance and not remote, and you can be a remote and be a permanent as well. So slightly two different answer. If you want to go freelance, the only advice is work on your network. That's network, network, network. You need to have, I would say, 3 to 4 solid clients, and you already have like built trust with them, because they would be much more inclined letting you go and giving you work, because they know they don't have to micromanage you, because they already trust you. You already know how to work together. So really
Yeah.
work on your network, identify the few key person that will provide work, and work on this. Keep the network active, like go and visit those guys, pick up your phone, chit chat. Don't be serious all the time. It has to be fun as well. Talk about your personal life. Build a network. For someone who's permanent and who's stuck in a company that has a hard policy on absolutely no remote work, this is a bit more tricky. There are some ways to do that, but that would take a bit more work and a bit more time. You could say, for instance, go and ask your manager for a trial version of it. Let's say for 2 weeks. Let's see. I understand your concern about the productivity drop. I understand your concern about me not being available on the tight deadline. I understand the concern about the communication issue that may arise. Let's find out for 2 weeks whether that happened or not, and offer him to be able to revert back to the same situation. Say, if that doesn't work out, I'll be back in the office as before. Usually they will say yes, because they have nothing to lose. They just a trial. And then for 2 weeks, you work your ass off. You really work your ass off. You work
Make sure it works.
11 hours a day. So after 2 weeks, you show up and you're like, look at all the things I've delivered. That is working.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's fantastic advice. Give a trial period, because I think that the biggest problem, like you're saying, is managers worry that the productivity will go
Of course
down.
they worry, but everyone worries. This is like a big people are afraid of changes, right? And that's the same with AI. People are very afraid just because it changes, not because it's
Hmm.
going to be worse or better. It's just like it's going too fast, and I'm not sure. Like the good old word is always had a sense of comfort, but this is the
Yeah.
previous word. We are in a new one now.
Well, I really like your optimism. I hope you stay optimistic and curious and finding creative ways to make that digital nomad lifestyle work, and yeah, encourage other people who want to try it to get in
Thank
to
you.
get into it.
Yes.
Yeah, and good luck with
Yes.
your artist collective.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you for coming on, Camille.